It's a pleasantly warm May afternoon. I'm at 9 Stanes Recumbent Stone Circles at Gorrel Wood, and just a quick walk through since it's a lovely day. So quickly going to just walk through the stone circle and then maybe some thoughts on the recumbent setting, just to kind of go into a wee bit more detail around. So what we've got is the recumbent setting is we've got what we should say is we've got 11 stones, although maybe one of them is a wee bit difficult, number 8, it's a wee bit difficult to maybe see that it's there because there's just a stump, or less than a stump. Its orientation is oddly southeast when you're in the middle of the circle looking over the recumbent. And we'll maybe talk about that later on. So like 11 stones, and they're all standing apart from stone number 3, the east flanker. So stone number 1, the west flanker, then it's a block of a stone. Hard to kind of determine if it's any kind of particular shape. There's a whole chunk missing under here. It seems, even with that, it seems that the stone is almost top heavy. It's almost like it's the wrong way. It's the wrong way around. Just as an observation, and I'll again we'll maybe come to maybe why that is later on. But it's definitely in a socket, maybe a very shallow socket, but definitely in a socket. It's got lovely. It's got some, like all the stones here. It's got some nice quartz. A bit hard to determine any kind of angles or shape to this, but there's clearly been some kind of damage or some kind of breakage there from I guess the original shape. So standing beside it, so it's probably just maybe 1.9, kind of coming up to sort of 2 meters tall. It looks like it's got a slight lean, but again it's maybe just because it's in a shallow socket. So yeah, pretty big stone. Number 2 stone then, the recumbent itself. So a bit of a boulder. The top of it is kind of beveled with some kind of little bits of kind of higgledy-piggledy down the centre of it. There's a bulge at the back, and on the front there is a fairly flat side, which would make you either believe that that's either the front or indeed the base if it was maybe rolled over. And interestingly, I'm not sure if anybody's noticed this in the past, but using a rather delicate tool, I was able to dig out some moss, and I have found that there is a distinct crack. I believe this recumbent's in 2 halves. There's a crack back to front, top to bottom, all the way, where this recumbent, I believe, has been broken in 2 bits, right down that line. I'll show you the top. Right along the top there. And you can see it right coming right running down here. It runs right down there. So I think this recumbent's in 2 bits. And it's maybe not been so obvious because of the moss and growth. But it is odd in that, you know, generally what we see of recumbent stone circles, the shape and the size of them, you know, boulders like Cuthie Wood is a kind of bouldered shape, a bit long. But this is kind of bouldered top, bouldered back, and then a very flat front. Like really flat. And just odd that it's maybe needing to be, the flat edges maybe needing to be far more perpendicular to the ground, or indeed the boulder has actually been flipped over and that's the base. And I'll come into that in a little while. But it's just for a bit of measurement then. It's about it's at 2.5 meters long. It's not very high, so at the back end it's just up to my waist. At the front end, coming around, it's just kind of, again, it's up to my chest. Now, the reason for that is the cairn, the base cairn, which is still here. You can see, but the stones have been kind of stumbling over them. The kind of stones around here. The base cairn is still here, so it raises the level on the inner circle to the outer circle a wee bit. And what's unusual as well is the recumbent setting is absolutely in line with the diameter of the inner cairn, which is really unusual. And again, that might come into play about why the recumbent is where it is. So what normally happens at places like Elsie the Greater and Lonehead Adaviat is the cairn would come along in its own diameter well within the stone circle, and then there might be a couple of curb stones that edge towards the recumbent by a couple of meters. That's not the case here. The cairn diameter comes along and meets the flanker. So it's quite unusual, and it might come into play about why I think the recumbent's either been moved or the circle stones have been moved a little bit on this. So stone 3, the east flanker, quite a traditional looking flanker. I'll blaspheme by standing on top of it. With some probably a pointed top, if that indeed is the top. It's a block of a stone, quite a traditional looking flanker, and it's quite long. Again, if it's out of socket, so a good 25 to 30% of it would be in its socket. So not the biggest flankers we've seen, but certainly a little bit more blockish, a bit more square kind of profile round about it. So coming round, as I said, the cairn diameter, and then breaking off to stone 4. So stone 4 has a bit of a flat face-ish on the outside. Looks a bit of a slab of a stone in that it's a flat face, flat-ish face, thinnish across the width of it. I suspect that it's taken a fair smack of a tree or two over the years, and I say that because of that chunk out there. I say that because of that missing corner, possibly in the top, and possibly a whole section of that missing. Just seems to be a bit of a, although it comes across as a slab, there's looks to me like there's sections being missed off it, or broken off it rather. Number 5 then, coming around the diameter then, is again a smaller stone. So sorry, number 4 was probably just up to kind of my shoulder height, up to my eyesight height. Number 5 is more or less up to my chest height, and flat face on the outside, more like a kind of tombstone-ish, quite wide at the bottom, width-wise. Again, some possible damage down at the bottom, perhaps. Pointy, if that's its original shape. Number 5. Number 6 then, smaller stone, which would give you a kind of idea that it's in keeping with the kind of general design of flankers being the tallest stones, and as they gradually get shorter as they come to the back. So this is number 6. Again, some nice quartz in there at the top, but again there's some cracking down the seams of it, down the grain of the stone for sure. Number 7, this is a chunk, although it's only coming up to kind of, again the ground undulates round about here, but it's only coming up to kind of waist height. Again, you might think this is the original height, but it is a monster of a stone. It's like, it's a good metre on each face, square all the way around. Again, some evidence of nice quartz in there. So that's up to now number 7. Number 7. Now, in the Great Crowns of Stone, the documentation in there identifies, I think, this area here, this stone here is maybe kind of 8 as a kind of socket, or where 8 would be. So I think this is maybe just a filler stone of where 8 would be. So can't really talk about 8 much. Number 9, a broken off stump. I think the documentation talks around about that being split into 3 parts. Difficult to maybe kind of see. There's a kind of a stone here that could have been maybe part of number 9. There's no evidence of anything lying around it, but it's just a kind of almost just off the floor kind of stump of a stone. It's identified as number 9. Number 10, it's almost as if somebody's, washed this down with acid or something. It just seems to have had a bit of a poor life. There's whole chunks, cracks right down here. Looks like it's had a bit of a bashing, to be honest. I can't believe, there's whole chunks missing on this side and in their face. There looks to me like a bit of a cup up here, or a cup mark, maybe another one there at the top. Yeah, so this is about kind of just maybe kind of shoulder level for me, kind of stone, being in the wars. And then number 11 is a bit odd in that you'd expect number 11 to be taller than 10 but shorter than the number 1. So it's not. It's only up to about belly height. Again, a chunk of a stone, a good metre, or almost a metre across, quite a metre at the base. Looks like there's maybe been a chunk missing here out of this side, and it's leaning as well, so a bit difficult to tell. But so that's number 11, and that's us back to number 1. So the cairn, let's talk a little bit about the cairn. So Cole, back in 1904 or 1903, had done quite a bit of excavation. I think he actually excavated where number 8 was, and the central cairn, the central court of the cairn and such, and found some evidence of charcoal. But what is odd is although the cairn's been robbed significantly, the base is still here and quite evident. I mean, I'm standing with my back to number 1 stone, and the diameter, I'm going to walk the diameter right round of the cairn, is really quite obvious, all the way around here, past where number 8 would be, past where number 7, fairly obvious cairn base, 6 and 5 and 4, and then all the way back to, unusually, number 3 stone, the flanker, like right into it. So there's a couple of things that are unusual that makes me kind of, if you add them all together, makes me kind of feel, just in my opinion, that this recumbent's been moved. And why or how it's been moved, I don't know, but it just has that kind of feeling that it has perhaps been. The first one was the cairn. It's unusual to have the recumbent right on the cairn diameter. It's normally a good couple of metres beyond it. So in that section there, you'd maybe think. It's unusual that the recumbent is facing southeast and not south or southwest like the rest of them. Again, it might be particular to this circle, but it's unusual. So again, if this recumbent has been skewed or shoved back, if you look at the documentation in Great Crowns of Stone, the plan view, it does look the recumbent is just a little bit out of line. Even with the circle of the cairn, it looks like it's out of line. It's like it's been shoved to the side. So again, I suspect it's been moved. The original position of stone 3 was leaning up against the recumbent. It wasn't socketed. The early surveys always seen stone 3 as leaned against number 2. In fact, Cole was very concerned about undermining stone 3, that it might topple over. So that's proof that it was unsocketed. So if it was its original position, why on earth would it not have its socket? So that kind of suggests to me that that stone 3 has been moved from its original position again. And if you take the general, again, I'm the one that tells everybody that's, you know, well, I'm one of the many of the group that tells everybody about reconstructions. It's quite possible that the circle stones have all been reconstructed and are not in the original sockets, but if you take it as read that they are, then the circle arc would meet the recumbent way down here, not there. That arc would come round here, just to where this fallen tree is. And that arc would come round here to where this fallen tree is. So the stone arc would suggest that the recumbent should be roughly where I'm standing and not where it is. And even the documentation talks about the stone being skewed, maybe shoved. So yeah, let's pretend then that the stone 1 is actually upside down and should be where I'm standing. The recumbent is actually, that's its flat bottom, and it should be topped up and pushed in more like here. And stone 3 is actually never been in its socket anywhere near there, and its socket's somewhere around about here. Then you get more of a kind of south facing recumbent. It would be in line with the arc. It would be away from the diameter of the cairn, and it would just seem a wee bit more in place. The very fact that it's got a crack right down the middle of that recumbent would suggest to me that something's happened to it. Could have been always there and it's been smacked by a tree. Also, there's a sketch in the Great Crowns of Stone as well, I think from 18 some or other, which talks about this circle actually being one of 3. This circle here, a concentric circle which comes into this one and goes down south with a cairn, a couple of cairns, and then both these circles surrounded by a larger circle, maybe about 25, maybe even 50 metres kind of diameter type thing, all the way around. There's only really been, somebody's maybe found 2 of these, 2 stones that perhaps could have been something to do with that. But it's almost impossible to kind of even look at that now with this gorse bush. And this area was forested until about 2 years ago when the storms hit, and it was devastated. And you can tell these trees haven't been moved yet. So yeah, there's a possibility that this recumbent's not in its original position. That's all I'm saying. Either that or stone 4 and stone 11 aren't in their original position, and the circle's a little bit tighter than everybody thought. But yeah, there's just a few hints to kind of suggest to me that that recumbent has been moved. Why it's been moved? A really keen Indiana Jones type person, believing that there's something underneath it. It could have been moved because of forest damage. Again, the stones maybe been reconstructed back a little bit because of that. There could have been a whole different, loads of reasons why it's been moved, but it looks like it perhaps has been. So, I hope you've enjoyed that little bit of walkthrough for 9 Stanes. And thanks very much.